There we go. I'm here with Dr. Summer Cherland, and for Ask the Author on Monday, July 11th. We're going to get started here in just a second. If you're joining us already and have already had to listen to our back and forth, then don't worry, you'll have more of it. I just want to make sure that to let everybody know that this is being recorded and will be posted on our AHS YouTube site. And so I want to make sure that's okay with you, Dr. Cherland?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking.
All right. You can go back one slide, Janie. There we go. And we're going to get started here in about 3 minutes. So go get your snacks or your drinks or a stretch, or be like me, just sitting in front of the fan because it's 107 here. I think still it's 107 here.
It is so hot. It's 115 here in Phoenix. And I know it's July, but for some reason it just seems even more punishing than it should.
And I grew up in the Southwest, and every year, I'm like, there's just no reason for it to be this hot.
Oh, it's miserable.
Yeah, it really is. I always say that there is no way that the white settlers settled here in the summer. There's just absolutely, they had to come here in the winter and go, oh, this place is wonderful.
Right.
And then it was too late. By the time it hit July, they were like, well, now we're stuck.
Right.
All right, let's see. I want to make sure I have your bio here. If you're just joining us, welcome to Ask the Author series with Dr. Summer Cherland. And we're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. I'm going to give people some time to get home, turn on their air high, turn up their fans, get an iced tea, and then we'll get this wonderful program started. I want to thank everybody for coming, tuning in, and remember this program is being recorded and will be on our YouTube channel. And so if you missed something, don't worry about it, because you can watch it again. Also in the chat box, Dr. Cherland gave us some links that you're going to want to check out. And we'll have her go over those links here once we start the program. But one of them is a link to her article in the Journal of Arizona History. So I know you're going to want to check that out because it's amazing. And it's open use this month. So if you're not a member or you don't have access to Project Muse, you can still check it out, give it a read. All of our Ask the Author series, we make available the article, we make it available for the month of the Ask the Author. So this month you get to read Dr. Cherland's wonderful look at higher education in South Phoenix. We're going to get started in just a minute. I hope everyone is trying to stay cool. If you're joining us from Arizona or Texas, apparently Texas is also hot. Here in Arizona, let's see, it was what, 115 in Phoenix and about 100, and I think it got up to 107 here in Tucson. I have not ventured outside. Basically a hermit in my house. All right, well, I'm going to get started. Welcome to Ask the Author series with Dr. Summer Cherland. This is part of a series that we are doing this year and highlighting one of our wonderful authors that have published with the Journal of Arizona History. And we are super happy to have Dr. Summer Cherland here with us. My name is Dr. Laura Key. I'm the managing editor of the Journal of Arizona History and the coordinator of the AHS Research Fellowship Program, where we invite scholars to come and research in our amazing archives and help us preserve and disseminate Arizona history. I'm here with my great friend and colleague, Janie Adams. She is going to be in the background, and she will help with any technical issues that we have, because I am not so good at the technical issues stuff. So thank you, Janie, for being with me. Next. All right, just some helpful reminders. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat box or the question and answer feature, and we will get to them at the end of Dr. Cherland's presentation. This event is being recorded. A link of the recording and a survey will be sent out to all participants. And you can enjoy the recording on our YouTube channel. And so don't worry if you missed something or you had to step out or something like that. Don't worry, you can see it again. If you enjoy this program, or many that we have like it, please consider becoming a member at azhs.org/membership. Don't worry, we'll give you that link again. Next. Part of Arizona Historical Society is our mission is connecting people through the power of Arizona history with programs like you are participating in right now, in addition to our museums. The Arizona Historical Society is a nonprofit organization and a state agency established in 1864. We have 4 museums statewide. Speaking of hot in Yuma, but Sanguinetti House is nice and cool. If you're in the area, go visit. I'm in Tucson, JD's in Tucson, but you can go to Tempe or be cool in Flagstaff. We collect, preserve, and tell the story of Arizona's past through museum exhibitions, libraries and archives, historic sites, educational programs, and of course, the Journal of Arizona History. Stay connected, help us fulfill our mission. Become a member. It's a great gift, by the way. Also, it's a very reasonable price. Sign up for our email list and follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram, on Twitter. And my favorite is order a license plate. Look at these beautiful license plates that I'm trying to manifest into our monsoon. Please let it be more monsoony. And so visit azhs.org today to become a member. Once again, this is part of our Ask the Author series. And as you can see from our schedule here, we still have plenty for you to join in. We're going to mix it up next month and have a lunchtime Ask the Author series. So please join us for a lunchtime discussion with Dr. Christina Lake. And then on September is our Sport History Roundtable. It was from our issue in the winter of 2021. And so we're going to have several authors just talking about sports in Arizona. Come on with the Pac-12 issue and USC and UCLA. You know you're going to want to tune in for that. And finally, I'm here to introduce Dr. Summer Cherland on the program of A College Down There, Higher Education in South Phoenix. Dr. Cherland is an author, speaker, and educator. She researches, writes, and teaches about the historical significance of race and social justice in public and higher education, particularly in the urban Southwest. Her publications and presentations include investigations into the Chicano movement, civil rights organizing, and leadership in the era of segregation. Dr. Cherland is also an expert on the scholarship of teaching and learning, faculty training, and the benefit of higher education to historically underserved populations. Dr. Cherland is a faculty member of the South Mountain Community College, where she teaches American, African American, and Chicano history. In 2017, Dr. Cherland co-founded the South Phoenix Oral History Project with a group of students. SPOH is a student-led initiative to capture and preserve the untold stories of innovation, education, and equality and equity in South Phoenix, Arizona, and something that's near and dear to my heart. More oral histories. Thank you for doing that. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cherland. I am going to turn off my camera, and my microphone, so I don't disturb you, but I will be right here. And Dr. Cherland.
Thank you, Dr. Key. And thanks to all of you for joining us on Monday night in July. I'm going to share my screen with all of you, and you should see my Google Slides. But if you'd like access to the article or to the slides themselves, you can find the links to those in the chat. I believe Janie's going to post those if she hasn't already in the chat. So you should see our website with the Ask the Author series. The slides are right here in PDF form. And then here's the article that was recently published in the journal via Project Muse. So if you want to read along or if you want to check out our website while I'm speaking, that would be perfectly fine with me. So thank you. Thanks to all of you at the Arizona Historical Society, along with the editorial staff at the Journal of Arizona History, for being so receptive to this work. Tonight, I thought I would tell you a little bit about the history of South Phoenix and the founding of South Mountain Community College. Much of what I will share will be familiar if you've read the article published in the recent issue of the journal, which is available for free this month and through Project Muse. And I will highlight some of my favorite stories, as well as the unique methodology that informed my work. And so one quick plug, feel free to check out southphoenixoralhistory.com for really anything in terms of our digital archive. It's always being updated. And then we'll have time at the end for comments and your review and your feedback. So if you have questions or comments or input, I really do welcome it. On a warm August morning in 1981, Dr. Raul Cardenas stood near a flagpole at the front entrance of South Mountain Community College. Excitement and pride washed over him. It was his first day of school. Today, students would learn in classrooms on campus. He squinted south toward the Western Canal, which ran parallel to Baseline Road. His eyes drifted to the South Mountain Preserve and then toward the cotton fields framing the school's parking lot. Raul Cardenas thought about his own childhood in Del Rio, Texas, and what it meant for him to be welcoming students to a college where he was the president. So how did this college plop down in the middle of rural farmland in what felt like a century away from a booming metropolis of Arizona's capital city come to be? From 1977 to 1981, people living in South Phoenix fought to bring a community college to their neighborhood. The years they spent struggling for a college reveal nearly 100 years of state and local measures to segregate the poorest, Blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, and Asians living in Phoenix. Sometimes it surprises students to find out that Phoenix practiced de jure segregation in its first days as a town site, but many of you already probably knew that. Of course, this kind of history results in isolation of the city's most vulnerable in the least desirable neighborhoods, and this has generational impact. My goal for this article was, and the scholarship really, is to find the under-researched examples of resulting activism for equity and community control of education. To do this is to demonstrate how the local people of South Phoenix in this story were part of a longer, broader sweep of national civil rights and Chicano power. I'm curious what all of you think. Where is South Phoenix? Where does it begin? Where does it end? How do you know you're in South Phoenix when you're there? What do you know about the community? How do insiders refer to it? And how do outsiders refer to it? I have a feeling if you're local to Phoenix and you've turned on the local news anytime recently, you know something about South Phoenix in terms of crime, race, and demographics, in part because of the way our local media covers our community. South Phoenix has a lot of nicknames. The Akmil Otham, federally known as the Pima, who consider themselves descendants of the Hohokam, call this area Muhadag Duwag, meaning greasy mountain. In the 1980s, a group of white citizens who were living in a little pocket of South Phoenix fought to change the area only where they were living to the South Mountain Village. Outsiders call it Down There. This nickname remains the most pervasive, and that label Down There portrays a long history of misinformation, racism, and dismissal of one of the valley's oldest residential areas. Perhaps Down There refers to sort of the fact that it's south of the Salt River, which is a natural geographical barrier that cut off the communities of South Phoenix as early as its early settlement in the 19th century. Who lives in South Phoenix? Down There also serves to delineate the them from the us. The racial makeup of South Phoenix is predominantly Black and Hispanic, and it is considered outside of, different from, unlike the homogeneous white areas which are home to some of Phoenix's oldest and white residential neighborhoods. And this racial makeup was no accident. Just like it was throughout the American West in the 20th century, white empowered Phoenicians employed segregationist measures to impose racial separation at home, school, and work. So where are the boundaries? We've done a lot of research on this, and very few historians are weighing in on the boundaries of South Phoenix. Most agree that the earliest boundaries of South Phoenix began with the isolation of Mexican Americans right here, if you can see my cursor, and I can annotate, sort of south of the railroad, where when the railroad was completed in 1887. So south of the railroad in the central city part of Phoenix, up to about the Salt River. This portion exists between the central corridor of the city all the way to the river. But by the 1890s, the area became known as both South Phoenix and Mexican and Poor. Those were the two names used. Over the years, South Phoenix has continued to be shorthand for Mexican and Poor, but also Black and Poor, as well as Asian and Poor. And this moniker came to encompass more territory and space as people continued to move south and city and farming life blended together. A couple historical distinctions about the community before we move into the 1970s. After Phoenix was established in 1870, a group of Mexican American farmers took up base at the South Mountains, like right at the baseline road, kind of where that area is. They were south of Lower Buckeye and between 24th and 32nd Streets. And they just began creating little homesteads, and they began rudimentary canal systems, pulling water from the Tempe Canal into their own community, and they called that the Mexican Ditch. That later provided the foundation for what is today's Western Canal, which runs parallel to Baseline Road. By the 1940s, South Phoenix had become home to the poorest residents of the city, most of whom were Mexican and Black. For the most part, people of color were banned from buying any property north of the Salt River until the fair housing policies of the 1950s and 60s. And so, of course, segregation in education and employment follows as a result, but also as a result of laws and legislation. Throughout the 20th century, there was only one bridge connecting this whole area to the rest of the city. It was originally constructed in 1911 as part of the Roosevelt Dam project, which occurred 1 year before statehood. It crossed the Salt River on Center Street, now Central Avenue, near Lower Buckeye Road. However, after decades of heavy flooding and traffic, as well as disrepair, the bridge was closed in 1966. What they did instead of rebuilding it or building more bridges was they just allowed traffic to use a 2-lane bridge that was a temporary structure that had been there just to sort of alleviate extra traffic when the Center Street Bridge was full on the original bridge. From 1966 to 1976, think about Phoenix exploding in the 70s. This temporary bridge was the only way for people to get into and out of South Phoenix. This all contributes to deep-seated inequities, which remained long after the policies changed and new businesses brought life to South Phoenix in the greater metropolitan area. So at the South Phoenix Oral History Project, we are currently in the stages of this major research project titled, Where is South Phoenix? It's a mystery to us. Where does it begin? But for tonight's purposes and for the purposes of the article, I used this rendering done by a colleague of mine. And I define South Phoenix by the following borders. Kind of Van Buren Avenue or Washington Street maybe at the north, but then also the Salt River is like a secondary northern boundary. The South Mountains all the way to the south, 48th Street or Highway 143 to the east, and 35th Avenue to the west. We're also considering extending our boundary to the Loop 202, which was completed in 2019, even though that's technically Laveen. Laveen's its own city. It's sort of part of the South Phoenix history. And in addition, South Phoenix can be defined as much by its racial and class composition as by specific geographical coordinates. This is because as boundaries are negotiating, so too is the identity of an area, as well as the claims to space and the ideals of the community. Phoenix's overall population exploded in the late 20th century. This growth called for an increase of access to higher education, and several developments took shape during this time that impacted the system we know today as the Maricopa Community College District. First, in 1962, the Arizona legislature first approved the Maricopa County Junior College District. And this district had one school, Phoenix College, which was founded in 1920. But their charge was to grow more opportunities for transfer programs to Arizona State University. Soon after, they opened several extension campuses in Glendale, Scottsdale, and Mesa, but South Phoenix was not considered a viable option. Students living in South Phoenix who wanted to go to college had to travel north over that Center Street Bridge. but there was already another governing board in place when they established the district board. The Arizona State Board of Directors for Community Colleges preceded a district governing board, and they oversaw the certification of teachers, the establishment of tuition, and selecting and holding the title for all campus sites. Meanwhile, the Maricopa District Board was supposed to be given control over hiring and salaries, and the expectation was that these two boards would work together. Two boards running one college at the time, and maybe a couple extension colleges here and there. Sounds like a recipe for success, doesn't it? Well, bureaucracy wasn't the only problem. There was also just a barrage of personality issues with the district governing board, and you can read about those in the article. But in March of 1977, the district board responded to infighting and conflict by hiring a chancellor to oversee all of the colleges instead of a president who would oversee individuals. There was a chancellor that would oversee all of them. They hired Dr. Paul Elsner as their inaugural chancellor of the district, and they also hired Dr. Alfredo de los Santos as the vice chancellor. Their job was essentially to right the ship, and the two had their work cut out for them. Elsner immediately proposed two radical ideas. Neither were popular, just different groups thought they were good, right? So Elsner first suggested a college without walls, which we know today as Rio Salado. It would have not had a centralized home campus. There would be classes kind of all over the suburbs that were offered by extension. The district board loved this idea. The faculty across the district hated it and called for his resignation. So in response, because they didn't like the idea of like satellite classes, they thought it would compromise the residential faculty agreement. So he thought, well, maybe they'll want a full functioning campus. I'll propose another college campus. So responding to local activists in South Phoenix, namely Verna McLean and Merle Morris, who had started a letter writing campaign for their own campus in South Phoenix, Elsner became supportive of a college down there. He thought the faculty across the district would support this idea. He was wrong. He and De Los Santos were just about to find out how deeply prejudice ran when it came to South Phoenix. I have a few clips from an interview we did with Alfredo de los Santos before he passed away a couple of years ago. I thought I'd share this one about an interaction he observed with the state board. Oh, shoot, let's see.
There was a break in the meeting, and South Mountain was not on the agenda, but the state board members knew about it. And 3 members of the state board walked into the bathroom. I was washing my hands, and this guy said, did you hear what I heard? Those people at South Mountain want a community college. They don't need a community college down there. And the other 2 agreed that those people in South Mountain don't need a community college. I didn't say anything, but when we went back to the meeting, I wrote down the name of those 3 men. They had this little nameplate, and one of them, the guy who talked about those people, was the representative on the state board from Maricopa County. There was a...
All right, let's see if I can get my presentation back how it was. Uh-oh, there we go. So it turns out that the state board members and the district governing board members were not alone. Faculty at the other 4 colleges were also questioning the need for a college down there. They asked why taxpayers should spend that kind of money building facilities in the middle of nowhere surrounded by nothing but farmland. Many faculty members claimed that the people in South Phoenix were, quote, perfectly happy down there, and that their migrant labor and their dilapidated houses were all that they really wanted. And those people would waste any access to higher education. Outsiders predicted that a campus surrounded by farms and poverty would just never be successful. So this is when the timeline gets just like a little confusing, and there's a ton of back and forth, meetings scheduled and stuff is tabled. So I hope I did a pretty good job in the article of outlining what happened when, and I hope that you take a look at that if you want to see a full breakdown, or you could do what I did and go to the district legal office and look at all the governing board documents, which I found to be very fun. But let's take a look at what happened in 1978. On April 18th, Elsner and board member Roger Brooks introduced motion A10B, resolution, establishment of South County Community College. They had vocal support from the NAACP and lots of South Phoenix guests. In opposition, members Ross Farnsworth, who represented Mesa, and Barbara Hitchcock, who represented Carefree, Fountain Hills, and Cave Creek, urged abeyance. Farnsworth motioned to table this resolution, but was overruled. Then Robertson, who is another member of the board, suggested that they hold a special session the next week and they would vote at that session. So they scheduled the meeting for April 22nd. April 22nd comes and only 2 board members show up, Roger Brooks, who wrote the resolution, and Bob Robertson. The discussion was put off to the next regular district board meeting for April 25th, 1978. So what happens on April 25th? The first point of business is to discuss this resolution of the college in South Phoenix. Dr. Cliff Harkins of the state board is the first person to speak. I think he's the guy that Alfredo saw in the bathroom saying those people don't need that. I think he's the crossover, right? He claimed that it was his duty to monitor the district board's activities. The local board, he reminded the district, does not select the site of a campus. The location of the site is actually up to the state board. Then Barbara Hitchcock of North Scottsdale took the floor. She cautions the district board against what she called, quote, irresponsibility toward taxpayer money. Quote, lest anyone try to say I am against minority rights, she continued, forget it. My life has been spent in supporting the rights of groups that have suffered from discrimination, economic, ethnic, religious, and others. She proposes a solution. What if Maricopa Tech, which is now Gateway, might expand to serve the needs of South Phoenix, and then other parts of the county can benefit from the fundraising that is taking place to open this college in South Phoenix. She thought that other communities like her area of Cave Creek, Carefree, and Fountain Hills, which has like 99% white population, there's very few people of color in those communities at the time, that they might benefit better from more campuses in their area. Citizens of these above named areas will have just complaints, she says, if we confuse our priorities and spend an enormous amount of money in South Phoenix. She then proposes or predicts that the state legislature and the state board would, quote, rise up in holy horror, she's very hyperbolic, if a South Phoenix campus were approved. Her amendment, however, fails 3-2. Next, several community members spoke up in favor of a full service college, and this included folks from the city council, the NAACP, local MECHA chapters from different college and high school communities, Chicanos por la Casa, and others. At that point, the vote was called, and the district board voted on the campus. South County Community College was approved by the district board 3-2. Martinez, Robertson, and Brooks all voted aye. Farnsworth and Hitchcock voted nay. By gaining approval of the district board, Elsner and De Los Santos had overcome their first hurdle, but there was still so much more work to do. Now they needed to push this initiative through the state board level, and this was not an easy step. They started by hiring their first college president to help them be the engine of this project. They hired Dr. Raul Cardenas as SMCC's first president, effectively making Cardenas of Del Rio, Texas, and UC Berkeley the first Hispanic college president in Arizona and one of the first in the country. But the state board drags their feet for months. Cliff Harkins continues as the state board's appointed representative to the board, and he continually cautions restraint to what he calls them the local board. He previously had told them, the state board controls the final timeline, and they also control the location of any future colleges. So throughout the rest of the year of 1978, Harkins attends most college district meetings where he makes frequent reports about the progress of South Mountain Community College, all which have a positive tone. But if you look at the timeline, you can really see manipulation at play. August 29th, so it's been several months now since the April meetings, right? August 29th, 1978, Harkins compliments the excellent work done by the district board in planning a college in South Phoenix and indicated that the state board will be voting soon. Then he makes no mention of it at either of the September meetings. Then the first meeting of October 1978, Harkins reports that the state board is moving rapidly on the question of South Mountain and that a decision is imminent. Then in late October 78, because there's 2 meetings a month, Harkins reports that the question of South Mountain will be on the agenda of the November 18th state board meeting, and he encourages the district board to attend. But then 2 weeks later, November 1978, he makes no comment on the aforementioned vote and once again just compliments the district for their hard work. Then from 1978 November to January 1979, no mention is made at the state board reports at any of the district meetings. So then comes January, the last meeting of January 1979, and Harkins has ominous news. The state board has decided that they're not going to vote on this resolution for South Mountain Community College, and instead they're going to appoint an ad hoc committee to review. Now, if you know anything about sort of district and bureaucratic policies, appointing another committee to review something that's already in motion is usually a death knell. So overall, the state board had continued to push back their votes, beginning as early as August, but I would put it all the way to maybe April or May of 1978 to January and then to February of 1979. They intentionally were just putting the decision off, hoping it would go away. So Elsner and De Los Santos needed help. They reached out to Alfredo Gutierrez, a young activist turned legislator who at the time was our state Senate majority leader. A tireless advocate for Arizonans and young people of color, he was well connected and very well respected. So Gutierrez calls Elsner de los Santos and a district board member, Robert Martinez, into his office for a strategy session in 1979.
The conversation went something like this. Alfredo had a little old telephone, but you could turn it on speaker. It had a little thing to the side, and he put it on speaker, and the conversation went something like this. Hi, Mary, is Bruce there? Ask him to call me. So about 5 minutes later, the phone rings, and it was Bruce Babbitt calling Alfredo. And Alfredo described to the governor what we had just told him. And he said, what do you want me to do? And he says, call those guys and other members of the state board that when the issue of South Mountain comes up, they should support it. So we waited there for about 20, 25 minutes, and the phone rang, and we could hear on the speakerphone, Babbitt said, Alfredo, you got the vote.
I chose to share that clip with you because we'd never heard that story. And when we started interviewing people, we began to hear stories like that. We'd heard others, right? But to have Alfredo de los Santos, who was a pioneer in higher education throughout his entire career, telling a story about a state senator and the governor of Arizona intervening on behalf of this community in South Phoenix. It was the first time we'd ever heard that story. It was not documented until we'd met with Alfredo. And it really opens up a part of the history that had not been told before. So though Babbitt's prediction would prove correct, that they would get the votes through the state board did not make it easy. They slated their own resolution for March of 1979, and they called it South Mountain Light. The South Mountain Light plan stripped the budget and slapped a 2-year moratorium on any construction. They could open a college in South Phoenix, but they couldn't build a campus. Essentially, they could only hold classes in temporary, like trailers or portable buildings, or at offsite locations like high schools and stuff. South Mountain Light, they believed, would allow for what would be a short-term trial run. This had never occurred at any of the other extension campuses since 1962. The state board scheduled this vote for March 18th, 1979, but they didn't tell anyone it was on the agenda. They kept it quiet, and they further misled the community because they didn't tell anyone that they had decided to relocate the meeting. The meeting was scheduled for a place in Tempe, but on the morning of March 18th, Dr. Cardenas received a confidential phone call. He still has not told me who told him this, to tell him that the South Mountain Light plan was on the agenda for the state board meeting. But even more tellingly, the state board had last minute decided to move the meeting to Casa Grande, which is about 50 miles away from South Phoenix. Now, remember, there's only 1 or 2 ways in and out of the community at the time. So it's really hard to get 50 miles away from South Phoenix. So it was telling, right? And this was a story we had heard multiple times from founding faculty members and staff about the meeting that was moved to Casa Grande. But the state board was really shocked when Cardenas arrived with a throng of South Phoenix supporters, including Verna McLean, Merle Morris, Alfredo Gutierrez, City Councilman Calvin Good, and many, many more, including newspaper people, journalists, etc. Cardenas knew that the board did not expect this many people in attendance, but the South Phoenix people were fed up. Gutierrez took the floor and reminded the state board that an immense amount of control is already built into your system. To further place any restriction is unnecessary. Essentially, the state board settled with only 1 dissenting vote on the concept of South Mountain Community College. So they were ready. They're ready to roll. Cardenas has his high aspirations for the college in South Phoenix in place. He remembered, we wanted it to be a little Harvard, he called it. His was a commitment to academic rigor and liberal arts at this new college. And it was a testament to his vision, but also a testament to his community advisory council. You see, for over a year, Cardenas had been meeting with people in the South Phoenix community who had really been talking to influence the curriculum. They were worried that South Phoenix would get pigeonholed into the trades or workforce development curriculum, and they really advocated for a liberal arts and performing arts education at South Mountain Community College. They selected a location site when the Hurd Corporation sold over 100 acres of farmland at Vineyard and 24th Street to the district. But as construction began, the state and district board was still causing problems. That South Mountain Light plan had done a lot of damage, and funding was then limited to only 5 buildings. Of those 5 buildings, only 1 could be a full functioning permanent building, and that was the gym. The other 4 were built as temporary construction. That was the only guideline they gave. It has to be temporary construction. Well, Elsner de los Santos and Cardenas were like, okay, we'll recruit the famous architect, Benny Gonzalez, who is beloved across the city of Phoenix, to oversee the design and construction of our 5 buildings. Classes started in fall of 1979 while construction was underway, and students attended at various locations, including the nearby Holy Family Catholic Parish, elementary schools, and South Mountain High School. As the 1970s came to a close, the future was looking bright for South Mountain Community College, and the Phoenix Gazette called Cardenas, quote, as proud as a man could be of dirt and weeds. On May 20th, 1981, the college wasn't finished yet, but 3 students became the first graduates of South Mountain Community College, and Cardenas was eager to celebrate. This happy occasion marked a series of 3 successes for South Phoenix. 1, the college represented a community-wide initiative has come to fruition. 2, it pointed to the potential for an educational program in an impoverished area. And 3, the degrees themselves, general studies and art, proved to South Phoenix people that their students would not have to sacrifice liberal arts and fine arts programs and be pigeonholed into workforce fields. Grassroots support and the efforts of dedicated students have made South Mountain Community College a success, reported the Arizona Republic. Patty Clark and Karen Ella Henderson earned associate's degrees in general studies, while Lawrence Eugene Jack earned an associate's in art. Now, graduating 3 students might not have seemed like a huge deal to other colleges, but to the people of South Phoenix, it was a symbol of great things to come. And then finally, the campus was finished. Take a look at this map on the right. Benny Gonzalez had built the campus at an angle. It faced the South Mountains and the Western Canal. To the west, the palm trees left behind by the Herd Corporation as early as like 1911, maybe, they remained as they would for the next 40 years. They still frame our campus today. Gonzalez's innovative and temporary buildings were a direct challenge to anyone who hoped to easily tear those structures down, because his designs included Native American inspired references like adobe structures and really mirrored his famed work in all corners of the valley. So after years of hard work on the part of leaders, educators, and community members, South Phoenix finally boasted a community college. In August of 1981, Dr. Raul Cardenas beamed with pride as he greeted newcomers on that very first day of school. He shook hands with students, introduced himself, and welcomed them to SMCC. A young, tall African-American man approached him in the parking lot, serious and studious, but with an air of joy about him. Cardenas did not recognize this young man, so he greeted him warmly. "Welcome," he said, introducing himself. "Can I help you find your next class?" The young man was Jerome Garrison, the campus's new adjunct music teacher, and Cardenas had mistaken him for a student. Over the course of the next 40 years, Jerome Garrison would earn his doctorate, oversee the design of an award-winning performing arts complex, launch SMCC's music program, create a massive student scholarship fund, and become a nationally awarded and recognized educator. He did all of this while teaching at South Mountain Community College. For years, this young music teacher was asked questions like, "There's a college down there, and why would anyone live down there?" Over time, Garrison grew very tired of outsiders calling his college down there. "I finally got tired of hearing that," he remembered. "I started saying, I'm not down anywhere. I'm up on a mountain. I'm up here. You can come see for yourself." Stories like Garrison's bring the histories of South Mountain Community College and South Phoenix full circle for me. On this very small community college campus in a historically disenfranchised corner of a giant metropolis, people like Raul Cardenas and dozens more have spent years working to fulfill the promises that South Mountain Community College has been making to South Phoenix for decades. Some, like Jerome Garrison, have dedicated their entire careers to this effort. And these stories are more than just anecdotes of individuals. Faculty and students at local campuses around the country are striving to fulfill the promises made by higher education every day, some in surprising ways. Nearly 40 years after the college opened, a group of students launched the South Phoenix Oral History Project. These aren't the students. These students are from a year later. I didn't think to take pictures of the founding students. These 12 students were enrolled in my History 105 Arizona History Seminar, and I tasked them with creating a shared research project for the class. The assignment was simple. I essentially said, you're to agree on a single topic that the whole class can study together that's relevant to everyone in this room. They chose to study their own community, South Phoenix. I was happy with this choice, right? Within a few weeks, however, it became apparent that this choice was really, really bad. It was really a struggle for all of us. It was 2017. How hard could it be to start researching a community in a humongous Western city? I remember being an enterprising PhD student at UNLV and wishing if only I could stumble upon a local community history that has not been researched or published a lot, and I could maybe make my mark in the field. Careful what you wish for. There was practically nothing in terms of secondary scholarship on the history of South Phoenix. There are a few articles here and there, but really, really scant. We recruited a research librarian who spent nearly 2 weeks conducting background searches that proved futile. We reached out to public and research libraries, as well as the state archives, to no avail. And I didn't know what to do, right? I called the class together and offered them to let them rethink their project. They were essentially 3 weeks into a semester-long project with no place to start, but they rejected my suggestion. One student said, if we don't tell this history, who will? Ever the enterprising community members of South Phoenix, is a community college, most of these students are from the community, they felt obligated to respond to this dearth of research in their own way. They proposed they spend the semester interviewing people about South Phoenix, collecting digital and physical materials, and starting an archive that could essentially be housed on our campus. The students wrote the foundational sentences, which ultimately became our mission statement. South Phoenix Oral History Project is a student-founded, student-led initiative to capture and preserve the untold stories of innovation, education, and equity in South Phoenix, Arizona. They laid the groundwork for our priorities. 1, inclusively claim, reclaim, and accurately retell the ignored history of South Phoenix. 2, curate and preserve historical material for students and community access. And 3, emphasize shared authority among campus and community. Since then, nearly 200 students have contributed to this project. More than 80 narrators have been interviewed for oral histories, most of them conducted by students. We launched a website, southphoenixoralhistory.com, wrote a documentary about the foundations of the college, and began processing 40 years of newspaper accounts, photographs, marketing materials, and other artifacts in our physical manuscript collection housed at the South Mountain Community Library. Community college students, arguably the most disenfranchised in the Valley, and those attending that college down there, the one that was discounted as unnecessary, they are effectively writing the history of one of Phoenix's oldest and most diverse areas. A few years ago, I asked a student if she learned anything by researching her own neighborhood. She just smiled at me and said, until now, I had no idea if South Phoenix even mattered. In 2021, South Mountain Community College was poised to celebrate its 40th anniversary. And of course, a global pandemic interrupted our birthday celebrations, but the work continued. This article and tonight's talk are both products of this endeavor. I've listed above some of our other pet projects, including our in-library archive, which is slated for a grand opening at South Mountain Community Library in early spring 2023. I hope you all come. And our historic walking tour of our campus. And you can find out more about these initiatives at southphoenixoralhistory.com. Lastly, I want to share with you the trailer of the South Phoenix Oral History Project. Not only is it a great introduction to our story, it highlights the work our students have been doing for 5 years. It also serves as a call to others in the community, maybe you, who might know something about South Phoenix that we don't.
Three members of the state board walked into the bathroom. I was washing my hands, and this guy said, did you hear what I heard? Those people at South Mountain want a community college. They don't need a community college down there.
40 years ago, all they saw was desert. 40 years ago, they didn't think we'd still be here.
When they built it, they used temporary walls so it could just collapse in case the college didn't make.
40 years ago, they didn't think our community needed access to higher education.
A group of people went to the district to get this college started.
There was an attitude about South Phoenix.
And the attitude was that, oh, the people are happy down there. They don't want to be educated. No way. There were people who fought to get this college here. I was at Mesa Community College as an adjunct at the time. And there was a little bit of unrest at the larger campuses because they felt that money that they could use on their campus was being put into South Phoenix, where it wasn't going to do any good or it wasn't it.
But for so they couldn't imagine. It's time for us to tell the history of South Mountain Community College. It's time for us to reclaim the history of South Phoenix. It's time for us to celebrate our ancient heritage. It's time for us to defend our significance. From our agricultural roots, citrus trees, and flower gardens.
But we were going to call it Citrus College initially. Yeah, because of the orange trees. There were a bunch of orange trees. And that was a big discussion. And then we decided to go to South Mountain because we need to build out the area, and this would be helpful to the area. But citrus colors was one of the keys that we talked about, one of the names that we talked about.
I started growing flowers, vegetables when you moved, got out of the camps. And my neighbor, Kishamas, started growing a few acres of flowers. And it looked pretty good to me, so I started growing flowers. And I had some friends that were in the flower business, and they helped me ship flowers to the Eastern market, like Chicago and New York and places like that. And it grew from there, where there was about 7 of us growers along Baseline Road. We were up here near Baseline Road because up close to the mountain, it's kind of a thermal belt. The warm air would drain down from the top of the mountain and down, and it kept a little warmer here.
To bare land, trailers, and borrowed spaces.
The first day I got here, again, we're in trailers. And I was saying, where are we going to hold classes? The church. The church. Okay. Right over here, it's gone now, was a chicken farm. And it stunk to high heaven. It stunk to high heaven. Okay, so that's one challenge. And then there was no air conditioning in the church. This is October in Arizona. It's hotter than hell. So they bring in these huge fans, and you had to shout to be heard because they made a ton of noise. I mean, I speak very loud when I teach, or I used to teach. I don't think they heard me.
We started in collapsible buildings. Now we have global influence. SMCC, born of community, anchored in our community, honoring our community. Humble origins, heroic legacy. The South Phoenix Oral History Project is here to capture and preserve the legacy of SMCC and our surrounding neighborhoods. So now, it's time for you to be a part of the South Phoenix Oral History Project. We need your voice. You know something we don't. Tell your story. You're the only one who can.
So of course, the work continues. On the left, you see things that are in progress right now. And on the right, you see long-term projects that we're working on, ongoing scholarship, things like that. But essentially, every semester, we have a new crop of students who are excited to learn about their community, and not just learn about it, but also share what they're learning with the rest of our state. You can help us if you know anything about South Phoenix. You can help us define the boundaries with our massive research project on where is South Phoenix. If you've lived or worked in the community, you could tell your story by sitting for an interview with our students or our faculty. And of course, because we're building our archive, we're more than happy to collect your materials at this point. So these are my references. The link to the article, which is free right now on Project Muse, is available. And of course, you can always check out our website. But I promised to leave a little bit of time for question and comments. So I really do hope that there's some review. Even if you have feedback for me, I'd love to hear it. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Like there was so much to look at that now it was hard to try to figure out what I was going to ask. So if you have any questions, just put them in the chat box. And we already have one. Mikado says, thank you for this excellent presentation. What an important and fascinating history. Completely agree. You mentioned that the borders and the breadth of South Phoenix is still a question. If you didn't use the rendering you described at the start, what would the alternative definitions of South Phoenix be?
Oh, wow, Mikado. We we launched this research part, this scholarship and this article without really knowing where the boundaries were. And I felt very sort of inept, and maybe I thought it would be unethical for me as an outsider academic to define the boundaries of community. And so that's why we decided to kind of loosely draw the boundaries around South Mountain Community College's kind of demographics, like the zip codes we pull from. But our next project is really reaching out to the community themselves and saying, where does your neighborhood begin? Where does it end? And one of my favorite stories is during an interview we did with a guy who swore, he said over and over again, I am South Phoenix born and raised, right? And he tells me, oh, I grew up in South Phoenix. I've always been, my family's always been in South Phoenix. We get to the end of the interview and I asked him, Gary, where is South Phoenix for you to find the boundaries? And he said, well, South Phoenix is, Salt River to the north, Baseline or the South Mountains to the south, maybe 32nd Street to 24th Street. But during his interview, he had told us that he had grown up on Magnolia Street, which if you know where South Phoenix, any of the streets in South Phoenix, it's about a mile north of the Salt River. And I was like, wait a second, Gary, you told me that you were South Phoenix born and raised, and just now you defined the areas of South Phoenix as 1 mile south of where you were born and raised. And he was like, oh, you got me. And honestly, I think that's what's so fascinating about this geographical approach is who defines the community. It's not its own city. It's a part of Phoenix proper. Do you use a capital S or a lowercase s, right? These are all the questions that we're hoping to discover in this research project. We have a team of students working on it. So I don't really have an answer because we haven't reviewed our data yet. But I would generally use that same area, right? South of the Salt River, but then I also kind of sneak into the central corridor because of the historical legacy of the railroad.
It's funny that you had said that, and I think geographics and boundaries are really hard anyways. Like you want to confuse somebody, ask them, what do you constitute as the West, right? And we'll put Texas in there and everybody will just be bamboozled. So, but my question kind of goes to that. I actually study Mexican Americans in World War II, and there's a really important post, American Legion Post 41, which was the very first Mexican American Legion post in Arizona. And I was looking at the map while you were giving your thing and everything, and I'm like, well, technically then that wouldn't be South Phoenix because it is north of the Salt River, right? It's just north of Buckeye Road and Central. But when I talked to the people, they were like, no, we put it here because this is the Mexican American neighborhood. And granted, that was in 1945, right? So maybe things have changed a little bit, but I found that really interesting is that considered South Phoenix, or do we look at South Phoenix more of a cultural identification as opposed to a geographical identification?
Oh yeah, I would count Post 41. And that's partly why we include Van Buren, which is north of what is the Interstate 10 now. Van Buren is much further north than the Salt River, but all in that map that we show you, there's like a pop out, all of those historic barrios, which some of them have been raised, right? The Golden Gate barrio, all of those places played a significant role in forming South Phoenix identity and culture. So for me, I like to include it as much as possible. I want our South Phoenix to be huge, but not everybody sees it that way. And it's kind of fun to negotiate those boundaries.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We got another one here. Do you happen to know if any of the students that helped the project are continuing this type of research at the university level?
Pablo, so great to see you. I am so thrilled to see that question from Pablo. Right now, I have one student who continues to do oral histories with me, even though she graduated with her associate's degree and she wants to go into nursing. And I'm like trying to support her, but she'd be like the most incredible graduate student in a history program. So I also just sort of hope she continues with the research thing. But we have a lot of students who are motivated to continue their research. So for example, I had a student maybe 2 years ago he took a Mexican American history class at Arizona State University, and he reached out to me and asked for access to our archives so that he could do his research project on the South Mountain Community College story. The only hard thing is that the students just get like one little inlet when they do an interview or they do a specific research project. So they need a lot of help building out their contextual understanding. So this student in particular, there was I didn't talk about it at all, but in 1984, there was an INS raid on the South Mountain Community College Financial Aid Office. So essentially today's ICE immigration raided our financial aid department, and it was all over the newspapers. And this student in particular wanted to research that topic. Well, as you can imagine, you can find a lot in the newspapers, but getting people to talk about what happened was really difficult. So he spent a lot of time that semester researching it, but he needed help from me and help from his other professor at ASU. But they've got the bug, right? There's students that definitely get the bug and they want to research it more.
I keep telling, our students, right, that being a historian is like being a really cool detective, only we work with stuff that's older as opposed to current. And it really is detective work. And you get to have like personal feelings, especially when you're like a lot, like you said, like a lot of your students come from that area and their parents or their grandparents or whatever. This is personal for them, and important. And I think, as you know, a dissertation or a book goes a lot easier if you like your topic, right?
Yes. Very true.
Thank you for the questions, and we're just about out of time. But I want to say one. Thank you so much, not only for your article and this important. Sorry, my cat is just being. Anyways. Teaching at a community college doesn't get the respect that it so deserves, and that community college are just a critical place for many students, and a wonderful jumping off space for everybody, right? And careers and just interests and everything. And this project, your oral history project, is just an example of the amazing work that goes on in community colleges. I taught at the one in Southern Nevada. And so first I want to just thank you that it goes well beyond publishing articles and teaching. It's really, like you said, creating those archives, creating those collections, getting those oral histories. It's very frustrating for a Mexican-American historian to want to look at Mexican-American history in the 1940s and 50s and just can't find anything, just like your students with South Mountain Community College, right? So, I think that's really important, of reaching out to the community and preserving these histories. So for all of you out there, preserve your histories and donate them to a museum and archives.
For sure. And, it's very difficult to tell a history of a community when the community hasn't been given any reason to believe that they matter. It's a lot easier to find records on Scottsdale Community College or Mesa Community College. It's just easier. But for centuries, our community members were told that their history wasn't important. So it can be really challenging, but it's so fun.
Absolutely. And I got into this because I wanted to hear my uncle's stories about World War II, and he's like, nobody wants to hear my stuff. Oh no, I really do. I want all your papers. I want everything. So never think that your history isn't important, especially for underrepresented communities and segregated communities and everything. Man, I would really like to get some more out there and access to it. So thank you for your work in that, and thank you again for joining us and giving an amazing Ask the Author program. This was wonderful, and man, come back anytime and just keep publishing with us. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Laura, and thank you to all of you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and be on the lookout for our link. You'll be able to rewatch this program again. We'll send it out to you, and keep our website available so you know when the other upcoming Ask the Author series are. Dr. Cherland, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.